All right, welcome to Frontline. 6 o'clock here on the East Coast. We begin tonight in Rhode Island, where more information is coming out about this trans shooter at yesterday's high school hockey game. Now, the shooter is a man pretending to be a woman in his 50s, was known to have a short fuse, faced court action for unpaid debts, and went through a divorce after gender mutilation years ago. We're going to have more on this in just a bit. Also, U.S. Capitol Police today arresting an 18-year-old man outside the Capitol. Police say the man, who was unknown to law enforcement, left his vehicle carrying a loaded shotgun and additional rounds, was wearing a tactical vest, and began running towards the Capitol building. And former Biden official Jennifer Daskal, you remember her? She helped create the administration's Disinformation Governance Board, aka the Ministry of Truth, has now been appointed as an advisor to the ultra-secretive FISA courts, chosen by the court's presiding judges to advise on legal issues related to foreign surveillance warrants and national security. What happened to all the Republicans in saying, one, they were just going to completely abolish this court, let alone, why is that woman on it? But first, don't let your friends vote Democrat. I'll explain why. Let's do this. Okay, look, it is no secret that I don't like Democrats, but it is all our responsibility to make sure that the people that you know in your life don't vote Democrat ever. Here's why. Because Democrats, one, don't absolutely ever listen to their constituents, and two, they ruin everything they touch. There is no metric in the entire United States of America that says Democrats can, point to one thing and say, hey, look, we made this better for whoever. No. I mean, they did make fraud better in Minnesota, but whatever. All right, Washington State, the perfect example of what happens when Democrats are in charge of absolutely everything with no checks and balances. Washington State, despite a $9 billion tax increase revenue boost in recent years, they've increased taxes by $9 billion on their people. They're still facing another budget deficit with some of the highest cost of living expenses nationwide, blaming everything but themselves. State Republicans noted this.
Tariffs don't explain why Washington has the second highest gas price of any state in the country. Tariffs don't explain why Washington has the fourth highest grocery prices of any state in the country. Tariffs don't explain why Washington has the fourth highest housing prices of any state in the country. Tariffs don't explain why Washington has the seventh most costly child care of any state in the country, or the third highest cost of living of any state in the country. Washington is uniquely expensive compared to nearly every other state. That is not a result of the federal policies. Federal policies don't target Washington. Washington State's policies target Washington.
Yeah, that guy's going to be joining me in a sec. But to cover their spending addiction, last night, the Democrat majority state Senate passed 27-22. Two Democrats joined all the Republicans in voting against this bill, what they're calling a millionaire tax. It's an income tax on household revenue, household, not singular, of more than $1 million a year. And that's going to be at 9.9%. Which on its face is in fact a violation of the state constitution, which states in Article 7, Section 1, quote, all taxes shall be uniform upon the same class of property. The word property, as used herein, shall mean and include everything, whether tangible or intangible, subject to ownership. And since in 1933, the Culleton versus Chase Washington Supreme Court ruled that income is in fact considered property. So a graduated state income tax, like they're proposing, would in fact violate their state constitution. So Democrats, they don't like listening to the Constitution, so they essentially did an end run around the Constitution. It's very actually crafty what they did. Pay attention to this. The way they wrote this to avoid a constitutional challenge, which they'll probably get anyway, but they quietly made this a tax on everyone of all incomes, but made a $1 million deduction for everyone. So only people making over $1 million would actually see any payments toward this. They're hoping it survives a very liberal state court challenge. Here's the issue. One of those state senators, who's also going to join me in a minute, said, hold up, wait a minute, some ain't right. And Republicans set a trap in Washington. They said, hey, we need a constitutional amendment or a provision to do this. So let's all vote on a single issue to enshrine this will only ever be a tax on people making over $1 million. But that failed because Democrats didn't want that in the bill. Now, if that was the Democrats' true intent, To truly only make it a millionaire tax, why would they vote against this provision? Oh, yes, I'm glad you asked. Because they don't intend to keep it as a millionaire tax. I will bet you a sandwich that in 3 years from now, this $1 million deduction starts to creep its way down. Start taxing more people, more money. This is the creeping gradualism of how taxes grow. This is exactly how we went from the original federal income tax that started at 1% and then made its way to 4% and 5% and 6% on the wealthiest Americans that adjusted for inflation at the time in 1920, over $15 million, to now it's not 40% on the same class under the same federal tax code. The reason they did this way is because no one likes tax increases. This is why they did it just on millionaires first, and the reason they wrote it the way they did. In fact, Washington has voted 11 times, that you see scrolling on your screen right there, over the last 90 years to reject an income tax. So the way to get public support for it is to tell people, oh, no, this tax doesn't apply to 99% of you, because only 1% of Washington state makes over $1 million. And the state is so liberal, and they love that eat the rich mentality, this had wide sweeping public support. Folks, if you live in a blue state, this is coming to you. I'm going to prove it in a sec. This is the classic Democrat playbook, using low information, economically illiterate base to push something that will ultimately hurt those very same people, and they'll turn around blaming on Republicans. But I mean, if you don't see this coming, you are a fool. We have a recent precedent to back this up, what I'm saying. Democrats in Virginia ran on very moderate positions, literally ran on affordability as their number one issue in that state. Then in the first month when they got elected in Virginia, passed and proposed some like 84 new tax increases. Ma'am Danny in New York City just today, suddenly faced with math, realized he can't pay for all his free stuff, particularly transportation, that, by the way, just had the price raised to $3, and is now going to attempt to raise property tax. They do this every time, and yet people still vote for Democrats. And then when they do it, they're like, this will be the same thing in Washington state. Consider this. And I'm speaking to Democrats here. If you're a Democrat in Washington, you may not watch this program, but you should, send it to them. Who makes over $1 million a year? Seriously. Oh, that's right. Mostly people who own businesses and employ other people. Now, in Washington, it's about 20 to 30,000. Approximately. They're employing, though, half of the state's private workforce, people in this millionaire tax class. Those are the people that will be hit with this tax. I mean, what's to stop them from leaving the state? I mean, Mount Rainier? Not enough to keep me there. When they start leaving with their companies, and then the people who work for those businesses don't have jobs anymore, the price of that millionaire tax that Democrats told you, no, won't affect 99% of you. It'll just cost you, or at a minimum, someone you know. Their entire job is gone. So did it affect you? Sure did. You can do this with any Democrat policy. You can do it with minimum wage, too. Perfect example, my home state of Connecticut, deep blue, back a few years ago, actually it was quite a few years ago, when they raised the minimum wage to over $10 an hour. At the time, one of the higher minimum wages in the country. You know what a lot of fast food companies did? They replaced them with kiosks and fired employees. Oh, look, you'll make more money. Look, Democrats are fighting for the little guy. And in reality, they cost 30% of fast food employees their jobs over 3 years because of it. Sure, 70% of employees made an extra $1 an hour, but 30% now made nothing. Here's what's going to happen in Washington state. Millionaires have millions of dollars, and they have the ability to leave, and they just will. Just like they are in New York and California. And in Washington's case, they're going to Idaho. And if you think they won't, they already are. Washington last year had a net loss of almost 8,000 people above the median income to Idaho. And the Democrats, they only have themselves to blame on these policies. Washington's government is all universally Democrat controlled. Democrats have held the governor's office for 45 years. The state house and the state senate has Republicans outnumbered almost 2-to-1 by Democrats. And they are, with that leadership, third highest in gas prices, sixth highest in grocery prices, fourth highest in housing prices in the nation. But Idaho, on the flip side, that have been super strong Republican for over 30 years in all their governmental bodies, They're one of the lowest tax states in the nation. Gas is 30 to 40% cheaper. It's the 10th most affordable state to live in, and a house costs about half the same as it does just west of their state line in Washington. Proving to you that Democrats make everything cost more. You cannot tax your way out of liberalism. I'm not saying Republicans will fix all your problems, but at least they generally don't create new ones and will tax you less while they do it. Friends, don't let friends vote Democrat. Washington State Senator John Braun and Washington State Rep. Drew Stokesbary? We'll go with it. All right. Yeah. So, Drew, I got to go with you on this one. It is crazy to me that we are having. Sorry, I want to go to John on this one. It is crazy to me that they have this whole thing and they think this will solve the budget deficit.
Yeah, this has been part of their approach for a while now. Everything's a tax-first strategy. They see a problem, they think a tax will fix it. And we're talking about the income tax. It's by far the worst one in front of us this year. But there are 72 other tax proposals in front of the legislature this year. Literally, they don't see a problem they don't think can be solved by a new tax here in the state of Washington.
Yeah. Well, Drew, and this is fascinating. I also watched your great speech, which we played a little bit of earlier, and what's happened in the House on Friday. Roll this.
What the bill does and what the bill represents is a $4 billion cash grab from pensions. We have a record $78 billion budget. And despite slowing revenues, our revenues still continue to climb. We don't need to raid the left one pension.
So the left one, I just want to explain this for our viewers real quick before I let you run wild on this, Drew. Firefighters and law enforcement pension funds, see, due to record growth in the stock market from Trump's policies, this pension fund had a surplus. It was funded at 120% of what they needed this year to fund the current pensions, a nearly $4 billion surplus. I mean, God forbid you have a surplus, right? The Democrats, your colleagues, had to sweep in there and take it.
Yeah, pensions were about the only thing that Democrats hadn't ruined in our state. We've got really well-run pensions. We've avoided the problems that have plagued states like California, New Jersey, Illinois. But this year, because of the gigantic spending hole Democrats have gotten themselves in addition to all of the tax increases that Senator Braun pointed out, they also are raiding the big surplus that was generated thanks to a healthy stock market from the firefighters and law enforcement pension fund. And they're not going to send that into other pension funds. They're not going to use that to give the policemen and firefighters more benefits. They're going to take that money and spend it on all the social spending programs that the tax revenue can't keep up with because Democrats continually spend more money than we take in as a state year after year.
Yeah, it's baffling to me. But they're not even stopping there, Senator. They're going even further, that the Washington State Democrats, the Senate Democrats, recently just passed a bill that literally will allow them to decertify and remove elected sheriffs at will. This could strip people's rights to sheriffs who they elected.
Yeah, this is completely disenfranchising rural voters in particular who elected these sheriffs. The sheriff office is called out in our state's constitution in every imaginable way. This is wrong for local voters. It's wrong for the state. It's wrong for law enforcement. It's simply a power play by Democrats who want to force our sheriffs to toe the line on their sanctuary state policies is what it comes down to.
Yeah. Drew, you were talking in one of your speeches. I watched actually a bunch of your floor speeches, which were very, very entertaining, very good. Talking about how much junk they spend money on, $500,000 to a climate thing, another $400,000 to consulting services that absolutely yielded no return. Is there any hope for the state of Washington under its current leadership?
You know, this illustrates the dangers of one-party Democrat control. You just mentioned the sheriff bill. Washington State has a long, proud history of voter ballot measures like initiatives and referenda. But Democrats control, as you showed a minute ago, kind of every lever of power in Washington, and they are changing the rules of the game to cook the books in their favor. They're changing the rules on how you qualify initiatives, which is one way the public can push back against some of the Democrats' craziness. They're changing the rules about electing county sheriffs because of our 39 counties. We've probably got Republican sheriffs and a good 30 or 35 of them. I think there is hope if you look at the current generation of Republican leaders, not just speaking for the two of us you have on our show, but both John and I's leadership teams in the state legislature, phenomenal people, the people we serve in our caucus, phenomenal servants that really want to do what's best for Washington. But the trick is we got to get folks, I appreciate you pointing out how much worse things are in Washington than Idaho, but we got to make sure that all of those conservatives in other states are coming into Washington.
Yeah.
We need those folks to balance things out. We need the conservatives left here to not give up hope, because we are making progress. It's always darkest before the dawn. But I do think that hope is around the corner, and John and I wouldn't be doing this job if we didn't think that.
Yeah, look, I live in Connecticut, which is the East Coast version of Washington, so I feel you guys, and I applaud your efforts to fight this, and we do appreciate it. So Senator John Braun and Representative Drew Stokesbary, we appreciate it.
Thanks, Carl.
All right, coming up, California voter rolls expose 125-year-old voters. What? Still on the books? Dozens crammed into P.O. boxes, dead people voting, and even a dog found registered to vote. We got Kurt Schlichter sounding off in just a bit. But first, one more tragedy linked to a tranny. A man, fresh off gender mutilation, opens fire on his own family during his son's packed high school hockey match in Rhode Island. Details next.
Charlie was the best of America, and the monster who attacked him was attacking our whole country.
Before Charlie Kirk died, he issued a stark warning of terrifying dangers ahead in a new book, Pagan Threat, authored by Pastor Lucas Miles. Charlie said Pagan Threat could save America and that you must read it. Get Pagan Threat free with Newsmax's special offer. Plus, get Dick Morris's new book, The Real Charlie Kirk. 2 great books with our free offer today.
Whoa, 90% off? I have to purchase now. My phone!
That was a scam link.
Try this one. We installed PCmatic.
PCmatic blocks ransomware before threats can strike.
It's 100% made in America security.
Trusted by homes, businesses, governments, and now you. Stop guessing.
Start blocking.
Get PCmatic.
Hi, I'm Wade Alaroot, the national TV and radio host known as the MAGA warrior and the capitalist evangelist. This presidency is ushering in the golden age of prosperity, and it's all built around making America the energy capital of the world. Enter Lost Soldier Oil and Gas. It took 40 years to piece together this 40,000-acre giant gas discovery. It's estimated to contain up to 6 trillion cubic feet of gas, with a management forecast projecting the first 25 wells alone to produce 400 million cubic feet per day of natural gas. This is how we power the AI future of America with clean natural gas. Headed by oil and gas legend Mark Bruner, whose previous public companies delivered spectacular returns for investors. At their peaks, Pedico Energy grew about 100 to 1 for investors. Ultra Petroleum grew about 1,000 to 1 for investors. To learn more about Lost Soldier Oil and Gas, scan the QR code on the screen or go to lostsoldier.com. That's lostsoldier.com.
Prevagen, official sponsor of U.S. figure skating. Greg trusts Prevagen for his brain, and this is his story.
Hi, I'm Greg. I live in Bloomington, Illinois. I'm not an actor. I'm just a regular person. 8 years ago, I just didn't feel like I was on my game. I started taking Prevagen, and I want people to know that Prevagen has worked for me. Give it a try. I want it to help you just like it has helped me. I've been taking Prevagen for 8 years now, and it's still helping me tremendously.
Prevagen, for your brain.
Well, as we mentioned in the open, horrific scene inside of a high school hockey game outside Providence, Rhode Island yesterday. Shooter opened fire, killing his ex-wife, his own son. Before killing himself, he managed to shoot 3 other people. 56-year-old Robert Dorgan, who reportedly had a history of mental health issues. And, would you look at that, identified as a woman, going by the name of Roberta Esposito. Now, riddle me this, Batman. How exactly did he get and keep a firearm in a state with tight red flag laws? If he had established mental health issues, his own daughter even admitted it.
He shot my family, and he's dead now.
What was the reasoning? Was there a family argument?
He has mental health issues, so.
Oh, that's right. Because no one considers playing a different gender and injecting yourself with like crazy hormones and mental illness, especially in Rhode Island. This shooting adds to a growing list of violent attacks involving transgender or non-binary or other freak show individuals. Let's look at the track record here. Robin Westman, Minneapolis Catholic church shooter. Audrey Hale, Nashville shooter. Sonoka Mosley, Maryland Rite Aid warehouse shooter. Devin Erickson, Colorado shooter. Anderson Lee Aldrich, Colorado Springs nightclub shooter. Harvey Marcellin, an actual transgender serial killer, also shot his then girlfriend. Charlie Kirk's alleged assassin, Tyler Robinson, had a furry obsession and lived with a transgender boyfriend. And Jesse Van Rootselaar, Canada's transgender shooter, just recently. No, you can't tell me that guns are the problem. When are we going to finally get serious about trans violence? Psychiatrist Dr. Daniel Bober and co-author of Embracing God's Design, Addressing Spiritual and Physiological Crisis Behind Transgender Identity, Dr. Jennifer Bauwens. All right, Dr. Bober, we've talked to you about this stuff before. It's clearly a problem with a 50% suicide rate among this group.
Well, listen, I think what you have here is you don't have a transgender person who happened to be an active shooter. You have an active shooter who happened to be a transgender person.
But it's becoming increasingly prevalent among that over any other group.
If you look at most mass shooters, they're overwhelmingly cisgender males. What you have here is that on average, people who are transgender do have much higher rates of mental illness, and thus they are in crisis a lot more. So this was obviously a very sick individual. These episodes have a pretty much standard pathway to violence. There's a grievance, there's a fixation, there's leakage, there's planning, and obviously access to weapons. And in this particular case, we look at problems within the relationship. There's other factors, loss of job, legal issues, but the most significant risk factors for these types of incidents are crisis, suicidality, because a lot of these acts are actually angry acts of suicide, history of domestic violence, and a past history of violence. So the fact that this particular individual happened to be a transgender person is not in and of itself a risk factor for violence. In fact, transgender people are more likely to be the victims of violence and not the perpetrators.
Well, Dr. Bauwens, I actually pretty much disagree with that. I think transgenderism is becoming increasingly a tag for the potential of violence. Well, what do you say?
Oh, well, I think really what we're looking at here is the travesty is that this person had interaction with the medical and psychological community, obviously because he had some kind of gender procedure. And that would have been a great opportunity for a good assessment to really look at what his underlying conditions are, rather than go down a path that led him to further disconnect from his identity, from his body. And, I think this is such a sad case because you have not just the loss of Mr. Dorgan, but you have other people, the victims who have lost lives, and this is becoming increasingly problematic. Mm-hmm. And I think it's really time that we look at how we're addressing the transgender topic, but also to your other guest's point, that we need to be looking at what are the root causes of these shootings, because they seem to be on the rise. We seem, of course, they're connected to other mental health conditions, but sure. when we have a population
is transgenderism possibly a symptom here?
I believe so, because you have all of these other comorbidities that are not being addressed in the clinical community, and a lot of times you have clinicians who the first sniff of a transgender identity, they go down the path of gender affirming care rather than addressing the real issues. And this person obviously had real issues. And that's a sad case because the field didn't help. They actually harmed.
I think you were out of time, but I think that's actually the key point there is the first initial reaction for so many doctors now in the transgender world is to affirm that gender rather than being like, are you sure? But Dr. Bober, Dr. Bauwens, we appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, coming up, Senator Ted Cruz absolutely he bodied Gavin Newsom on Twitter for not knowing facts about anything. But guess which one played the victim card? Democrats, of course. Senior columnist for Town Hall, Kurt Schlichter, joins me in a second.
People think news just happens. It doesn't. It happens because there's someone there to capture the moment, to explain it and share it. That's my job. I go where news breaks and give you the facts. Join me for The Record on Newsmax.
I was tired of being exhausted at 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
Toxic EMF radiation is coming from your smart devices.
We don't see EMFs. It's out of sight, out of mind.
People around the world are choosing Bodywell. Just peel, stick, and protect. Bodywell's BioCard protects your entire body.
This little device changed everything.
My kids are my world, and I want to do everything I can to protect them.
Go to Bodywell.com, order your BioCard today, and get a biochip, a $99 value for free.
Every day across the globe, big business agendas go unseen by investors. Things that go against your core values and beliefs. It's time to know your investments. Abortion, alternative lifestyles, gender and identity confusion. If you believe in protecting marriage and life, children, innocence, guarding masculinity, restoring families, defending religious liberty, invest with your values. Before investing, carefully consider the fund's investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses of the investment company. This and other important information can be found in the fund's prospectus. To obtain a copy, visit timothyplan.com or call 800-846-7526. Read each prospectus carefully before investing. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal.
Don't kibble your dog.
Hey, Dr. Marty.
Hey, back.
What's wrong with this?
Let's check it out. It's still kibble, which means they're ultra-processed. At Dr. Marty, we freeze-dried premium meats, fruits, and vegetables, and they're gonna love it.
Power of disease.
6 and please.
Intestinal worms.
15 million dogs and counting know Simparica Trio offers triple protection against heartworm disease, ticks and fleas, and intestinal worms, all with 1 monthly chew. This drug class has been associated with neurologic side effects, including seizures. Use with caution in dogs with or without a history of these disorders. Don't just protect, triple protect.
Joining us is Dr. Drew from the Wellness Company with advice for dealing with seasonal colds and flu. Doctor?
Cold and flu season is here, and every year you or a loved one gets sick. Your doctor can't see you. Waiting in a crowded urgent care is brutal. This is a particularly bad cold and flu season, and it's why doctors suggest every family needs an emergency medical kit. Your medical emergency kit is filled with essential prescriptions. It includes antibiotics like generic Z-Pak to get well faster, amoxicillin for pneumonia, strep throat, ear infections, plus prescriptions for nausea and UTIs, and even ivermectin. It's easy. Just match your symptoms to the prescription in your guidebook or call the telemedicine doctor standing by. Take your medication early and feel better faster. Having a medical emergency kit is like having an urgent care in your home. No waiting to see a doctor, no lines at the pharmacy.
Smart advice. We've shared the website and discount code below to save viewers $45. Order now and your kit will be rushed to your door. Thank you, doctor.
Another, dare I say, bright moment for Democrats in the books. Ted Cruz tweeted out a clip from his podcast. The caption, "Gavin Newsom is historically illiterate." Let me play the clip for you, just for context.
Just like AOC and Whitmer, Newsom is apparently thoroughly historically illiterate. He said we've never seen National Guards federalized in the states. I guess his history book does not discuss the civil rights movement. He's never heard of a president named Dwight D. Eisenhower. He's never heard of sending the National Guard into southern states when Democrats who refused to desegregate schools resisted. Eisenhower sent the National Guard in.
Just facts. I mean, a little history lesson, because Newsom clearly has no idea what he's talking about. But in classic Democrat fashion, Newsom resulted to the victim card, responding to Cruz saying, this is unbelievable. Ted Cruz is calling a dyslexic person illiterate is a new low even for him. Well, I am dyslexic and I approve this message. To which Gavin Newsom got shellacked by the community notes. The community notes were great. Quote, Senator Ted Cruz did not refer to Governor Newsom's ability to read, but rather his knowledge of history. Historically illiterate refers to knowledge of history. Newsom left the word historically out of the original tweet, which says historically illiterate. And the best part was Michael Knowles coming out of his, just throwing bombs. He said, quote, he called you historically illiterate, which means you don't know history. He didn't call you literally illiterate, which would mean you can't read, which might also be true, but you are clearly also systematically illiterate as you don't understand the meaning of words. Take your sob story and your hair gel and just go somewhere else. Kurt Schlichter, senior columnist for Town Hall. All right, Kurt, that's your governor.
I don't know why it went off. Okay, back on.
No, there you go. Push the button.
Oh, there I am.
I think we can hear you. Well, this is fun.
I'm technologically illiterate.
Yeah, there you go. But
this
is your governor.
Carl, it was amusing because I was literally working on my resume at the moment for something and literally writing down that I was mobilized federally with the National Guard for the Los Angeles riots the moment you went into your monologue.
Yeah. No, it's pretty actually amazing. This guy can't understand, though, that, he has never been able to support any of his things. Anytime someone calls him out on anything, it's either victim card or turn the page.
Yep. He's ridiculous and stupid. And he's my governor. This is my personal hell. But you're always going to lose if you try and compare brain. You try and go up brain to brain against Ted Cruz, the guy who argued in front of the Supreme Court 9 times?
Yeah.
I'm a really good lawyer, and I've done it exactly 0 times.
Yeah. No,
okay?
That's true.
So this is like a pickup basketball game down at the local high school, deciding to go up against the Los Angeles Lakers when they had Michael Jordan or Kobe Bryant or whoever the hell they had.
So here's something that and as veterans, both of us, near and dear to your heart, another Twitter war involving Congressman Randy Fine. Okay, so this woman, you're gonna love this one, Nirdin Kiswani or whatever. She's a Palestinian activist. Which
Nirdin.
It's not even a real place. Nirdin. All right, tweeted out. Quote, finally, New York City is coming to Islam. Dogs definitely have a place in society, just not as indoor pets. Like we've said all along, they're unclean. To which Randy Fine responded with his tweet saying, quote, if they force us to choose between the dogs and Muslims, it's not a difficult one. Obviously, Democrats are calling for censure of Congressman Fine, saying he should resign, and Ro Khanna freaking out. We must call it what it is. Disgusting bigotry. Fine must be censured and blah, blah, blah. Here's my problem. This is where they draw the line. This is it. You got Ilhan Omar presiding over fraud and, the terrorist recruiting capital of America. What is the stereotypical American dream? Marriage, cars, kids, house, and a dog.
Yeah, my dog's right there. And my dog ain't going anywhere. Look, I didn't raise this question. Nerdine, who did. And, of course, she fought back by calling the people who got mad at her Zionists, which is, perfect in every way, because it just sort of sums up what a hack she is.
Yeah.
But, look, if you're forcing me to make a choice, if you give me an ultimatum, I'm always going to choose the exact opposite of what you want, because nobody tells me anything ever.
Yeah.
I'm an American. You don't get to come to my country from your fake country of Palestine and starts looking around and going, okay, I'm unhappy with things you like, including your most precious possessions, I don't know, your dogs.
Yeah.
So I'm going to tell you how to live.
Yeah.
This isn't going to work out well.
The thing
as a lawyer, I know, don't ask questions you don't want to know the answer to. Don't ask me if it's me or your dog. You don't want to know the answer.
But religious imposition like this has led to global conflict and wars dating back to the Crusades. Don't push this stuff on people or they're going to lose it. Real quick, he's talked about dogs. Nick Shirley just uncovered that apparently a dog was on the voter rolls in California.
Nerdine must be outraged.
Yeah, I'm sure she is. All right, Kurt Schlichter, gotta leave it right there. All right, coming up. I love that guy. Hillary Clinton claiming that she has no links to Jeffrey Epstein or any of the people there, but receipts say otherwise. We get that in our Culture Clash and more next. When I served in combat, we relied on the most accurate information to complete the mission. We worked in small units that require trust. That mission hasn't changed. I'll bring you the best information that you can trust.
Watch Carl Higbie's Frontline every weeknight, 6 p.m. Eastern on Newsmax.
The Wall Street Journal said silver could be the trade of a decade.
Eric Sprott said $250 to $500 an ounce is entirely possible.
Gold recently surpassed its inflation-adjusted all-time high. Silver's inflation-adjusted all-time high is $209 an ounce.
And silver went up 1,300% from 1974 to 1980. Silver's got a lot of room to run.
Give Patriot Gold Group a call at 1-800-778-4156.
Patriot Gold Group is Consumer Affairs' top-rated gold and silver dealer nationwide. The only firm nationwide where you, the client, work directly with an owner. Home of the No Fee for Life IRA. See how easy it is to protect your IRA with physical gold and silver.
Call now, 1-800-778-4156.
Nobody knows Corvettes like McMulkin Chevrolet, the world's largest Corvette dealer for 5 consecutive years. Set apart by its name alone, Corvette delivers a legacy of American craftsmanship, and a vehicle that sets the bar for performance cars deserves a buying experience that beats it. With hundreds of Corvettes in stock and ready for immediate delivery nationwide, it's no wonder Corvette enthusiasts from across the USA keep coming back to McMulkin Chevrolet.
At Ancestry, we believe every question about the past is a spark. And when curiosity strikes about the everyday lives of your family, we're here with answers only your ancestors can provide. How is your family woven into 250 years of U.S. history? Find out now at Ancestry.
48% of Americans don't get enough magnesium, which is vital for bone, nerve, and muscle health. I recommend Cunol's Magnesium Glycinate. It's formulated for high absorption and is gentle on the stomach. Cunol, the brand I trust.
Have you ever thought of getting a walk-in tub for you or someone you love? Now is a great time to take a look at getting a Safe Step walk-in tub.
With Safe Step's standard heated seat and new fast fill faucet, you can enjoy a nice warm bath up to 20% faster. And the convenient touchpad control is right at your fingertips.
Each tub comes standard with a dual hydrotherapy system. The 10 water jets can help increase mobility, relieve pain, boost energy, and improve sleep, while the MicroSoothe advanced air therapy system oxygenates and softens skin.
Safe Step walk-in tubs are built to maximize safety so you can stay in your home and enjoy the comforts of bathing again.
So call now for more information and a free no-obligation consultation.
When you call today, you'll also receive our limited time offer. Don't wait to enjoy safer bathing. Call 1-800-296-0431.
Just to be clear, do you regret the links that there have been?
You know, we have no links. We have a very clear record that we've been willing to talk about, which my husband has said. He took some rides on the airplane for his charitable work. I don't recall ever meeting him.
Did you ever meet Ghislaine Maxwell?
I did on a few occasions, and thousands of people go to the Clinton Global Initiative. So it to me is not something that is really at the heart of what this matter is about.
Sorry, something in my throat, because there are some links. I guess this kind of makes sense. Oh wait, look, if Hillary, I'm trying to see, is that Ghislaine Maxwell sitting in an aisle seat at your daughter's wedding? She must have been just a total stranger to you. It's funny that Hillary runs to the BBC to do a press conference and talks about her husband finally agreeing to a congressional subpoena in the Epstein investigation. But listen to how she spins it.
I just want it to be fair I want everybody treated the same way. That's not true for my husband and me, because other witnesses were asked to testify. They gave written statements under oath. We offered that. They want to pull us. Why do they want to pull us into this? To divert attention from President Trump. This is not complicated.
Ambassador Stevens just wanted something to be fair, too, but whatever. Capitol Hill politics reporter at the Blaze News, Rebecca Zeljko, and Newsmax host Ike Wingate. Ike, welcome to the family over here. We haven't had you on yet. You know, Hillary just wanted it to be fair, man.
Yeah, it's interesting how she talked and talked and talked, but really said nothing. I was waiting for her to say, at this point, what difference does it make? You remember with the Benghazi hearings, that's basically her attitude. Like, I'm part of the elite, don't ask me any specific questions, and I'm better than you. And we have actual pictures that prove her wrong again and again.
No, Hillary Clinton would never lie or smash Blackberries with hammers or anything like that. Rebecca, speaking of perverts, freaks, and weirdos, Congressman and California gubernatorial candidate Eric Swalwell's erotic poetry back in the day kind of resurfaced. Pretty dark. He said, and there's beauty was formless and magnificent, a flurry of limbs and nails. She chased and I ran, and I chased and she ran. Atop my hotel she stopped, and I leapt for cloth and tan. My anxious arm she bit, my scar is... What the... Rebecca?
I mean, the whole thing's a little bit awkward, isn't it? That's like the theme of this segment so far. It's just like awkward. I'm kind of this whole thing is, it sort of reads like Twilight, which I admittedly have not read. I might be the only woman who hasn't read the Twilight series, but I think it's interesting actually that analogy comes to mind, is because this is a genre that actually might have worked on a woman. Like, women love this stuff. They love vampires and like this weird demented. I'm not going to defend it, but it's definitely not an uncommon trope for women. But yeah, the whole thing is a little bit embarrassing, and it's certainly not the only embarrassing romantic scandal that Congressman Swalwell has found himself in.
Yeah, no, well, Ike, the other thing too is, we've been talking about the West Coast earlier in the show, but apparently even the food on the West Coast, specifically Portland this time, is woke. There's a restaurant called Taste Bud, and it displays this pop-up message. We went to their website, and it says, food is political, no one is illegal on stolen land, F ICE, abolish ICE, release the Trump Epstein files, free Palestine, Black Lives Matter, trans women are women, love your LGBTQ plus neighbors, the Holocaust was real, healthcare is a human right, masks save lives, get your damn vaccines, wash your hands, germ theory is science, cook chicken to 165 and stay hydrated.
Well, that just about covers it all, doesn't it? I think they got it all. Food is political now. This is the problem in our country, Carl, is everything is political. They've politicized sports. I was watching Michael Jordan do that victory lap in that speech following the Daytona 500, and I long for the days when people realize Republicans buy sneakers too, and to stop injecting politics where they don't belong from the standpoint of asking athletes and actors and actresses and all these people about politics. And now it's in our food. Mm-hmm. And so I guess we got to get Maha on that one.
Yeah, exactly. Definitely. Rebecca, speaking of the anti-ICE movement, here's one of them threatening to shoot someone who doesn't agree with it. Roll it.
Me? Why should I be scared if my family's gonna die? What'd you say?
I said what I said.
I just wanted to confirm it, so I made sure I heard what I was saying.
Guys, we would have shot.
So one of the great lyrical masterminds of our time, she's clearly going to higher learning.
Yeah, unfortunately, this is becoming increasingly common behavior. And I have to say, I am from California. I hail from the West Coast. This sort of behavior is, thank you. I appreciate your condolences. This sort of behavior is becoming increasingly commonplace. These are people that I probably went to high school with, and people that I shared classrooms with. And I will say, every time I see a video like this and I see the types of people that are shouting these obscenities and behaving in this way, it's exactly the type of person that looks like they would do it every single time.
Yeah. Ike, how do we stop kids from, I don't know, skipping school with 6% literacy rates to learn math and not protest ICE?
Well, I have a pretty simple explanation, but some people might not like it. I think we need to go back to spanking our children and actually disciplining them and treating them right, teaching them right and wrong, and teaching them responsibility. I mean, my kids have chores. I'm sure your kids have chores, and we have to teach them discipline, not when you don't like something, respond with violence. It's just not the answer.
Yeah, and that's coming from a guy. I was really good at violence for 9 years in the military. And I still think that we should not use violence unless we have to. Ike, Rebecca, pleasure as always.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, coming up, more on the trans shooter in Rhode Island. How was he able to have a gun despite the state's really stringent red flag laws? We got that 2A Tuesday coming up.
Do you have a yo-yo smile? Sometimes yellow, sometimes white. It's a constant battle between everyday stains and whitening treatments. Until now, get Smile Actives, the daily teeth whitening breakthrough that gives you a more youthful smile and helps you keep it.
At 43 years old, I don't mess around with products that waste my time. Smile Actives is easy, and it works. No gloopy trays, no messy strips. Just add a little bit on top of your toothpaste when you brush your teeth. And ta-da, white teeth.
Just add Smile Actives to your favorite toothpaste and watch the magic happen. Our patented Polyclean microfoam lifts away deep stains for a dramatically younger and whiter smile.
You have a choice. You can have those yellow teeth and just be old Nana or Pop-Pop, or you can be smiling and dazzling and full of confidence. I love my white teeth.
Scan, click, or call for your whitest smile yet. And if you order right now, we'll double your whitening free. Get an extra Smile Actives as our free gift to you, but only while supplies last.
I drink coffee every day. I started noticing that my teeth were not as bright as I'd like them to be, a little dingy. The Smile Active, it works. Got your boy gleaming.
100% of users saw whiter teeth. Smile Actives lifts away even the toughest stains from coffee, wine, and food, gently restoring your bright, youthful smile. Plus, it's safe for veneers, crowns, and dentures.
It's really a no-brainer if you want to whiten your teeth.
Clinically shown to brighten your teeth 5 shades whiter in just 7 days.
If you could use something so easy like Smile Actives to take yellow teeth to white teeth, why wouldn't you?
Act now. Get Smile Actives for just $24.95 and we'll double your order free. But hurry, this deal won't last. Smile Actives is guaranteed to work. Whiten your teeth or get your money back. No questions asked. Don't wait. Get Smile Actives for just $24.95 and we'll send you a second bottle absolutely free. That's free shipping, a free extra bottle. That's an incredible 58% savings. Scan the code, go to smileactives.com or call to get your beautiful whiter smile now.
Joining us is Dr. Drew from the Wellness Company with advice for dealing with seasonal colds and flu. Doctor?
Cold and flu season is here, and every year you or a loved one gets sick. Your doctor can't see you. Waiting in a crowded urgent care is brutal. This is a particularly bad cold and flu season, and it's why doctors suggest every family needs an emergency medical kit. Your medical emergency kit is filled with essential prescriptions. It includes antibiotics like generic Z-Pak to get well faster, amoxicillin for pneumonia, strep throat, ear infections, plus prescriptions for nausea and UTIs, and even ivermectin. It's easy. Just match your symptoms to the prescription in your guidebook or call the telemedicine doctor standing by. Take your medication early and feel better faster. Having a medical emergency kit is like having an urgent care in your home. No waiting to see a doctor, no lines at the pharmacy.
Smart advice. We've shared the website and discount code below to save viewers $45. Order now and your kit will be rushed to your door. Thank you, doctor.
2A Tuesday, let's do some gun stuff. Now, following this deadly trans shooting at Annunciation Catholic School back in August, there were several reports that the Trump administration was floating gun restrictions for trans people, likely due to their mental health situation. Rhode Island already has really stringent red flag laws on the books. Maine, where the shooter was residing, has a red flag law that is set to go in effect on Saturday. And Florida, where the shooter lived after his divorce, also has some variants of red flag laws. None of these did anything to stop him from killing his family. Colorado Springs, Nashville, Minneapolis, Tumbler Ridge, Canada, now Pawtucket, Rhode Island. What can be done to end this scourge of mass violence? Host of Bearing Arms, Cam and Company podcast, Cam Edwards, and Second Amendment columnist at Breitbart News, AWR Hawkins. Now, look, Cam, you and I have talked about this. I completely disagree with red flag laws, but if they were voted into law because they allegedly work so star-spangled well, why don't they work?
Well, apparently in this case, no petition was ever filed, at least as far as we know, right? So, the gun control advocates would say this is why we need to expand the body of people who can apply for a red flag permit so that, individuals like this don't slip through the cracks. I think the bigger issue here, though, is this is somebody who clearly was disturbed. I don't know about a red flag law, but I think an order of protection filed by his family would have been well within their rights and would have been a good idea. But ultimately, you know, we're talking about the mindset of somebody that, honestly, Carl, I can't fathom murdering your own family. You know, we just saw another incident in Georgia today. A guy was getting evicted. He shot his wife, shot his daughter, killed the family pets, took his own life. And, you know, when we're dealing with that type of mindset, I think it's really hard for the vast majority of us to understand what would even lead somebody to do something so horrific like this.
Yeah, well, that's the other problem too. But the problem, AWR, is a lot of times when it's somebody, one of these protected groups, whether it be trans or whatever, they're like, oh no, we can't touch that protected group, and they're, you know, obviously by definition protected. But trans people have a 50% suicide rate. Okay, there is a part on the DOJ's firearm transaction questionnaire, 21G, that asks the buyer, have you ever been adjudicated as mentally defective, or have you ever been committed to a mental institution? Well, if your community has a 50% suicide rate, maybe we should start committing some of these people and make it a mental illness.
Right. Well, I think if your birth certificate is Robert and you go by Roberta, we've got an issue. And that's what we have here. And I agree with you. And you do see, you look at Nashville, as you said, you look at Canada last week, British Columbia specifically, you look at all of these instances where these trans shooters have just gone wild. And I wrote at Breitbart, Carl, this guy, the day before the shooting, this guy warned that someone was going to go berserk if people didn't lay off the trans community. He basically sounded the alarm on himself, and then a day later he goes berserk. So I think we have to take it seriously when somebody named Robert wants to be called Roberta. I think we have to go, this is bigger than a passing fad. There's a problem here.
Yeah, and stop encouraging it too. That's the other. But here's the other thing, Cam. Every time this happens, and it's like a white male, it's reflexive, like we got to ban all guns and this will stop everything. But the Rhode Island governor, Dan McKee, totally different tack. Roll this.
Too many Rhode Islanders know what it feels like to lose a loved one, a neighbor, or a friend to gun violence. And a tragedy like this is incredibly difficult for people of any age to process. If you need support, please call 988 to speak to someone who is there to listen.
I mean, not to like belittle the situation, but the last time the U.S. government put in a suicide hotline, they did it for the VA, and 33%, a third of the calls went completely unanswered.
Yeah, you know, and again, Carl, you know, Rhode Island already has, as you say, some of the most restrictive gun laws in the country, right? They've got a ban on large capacity magazines. They just passed a ban on so-called assault weapons. They've got a red flag law. They've got waiting periods. Maybe the governor will call for more gun control in the future. But I got to go back to something that you and AWR were talking about here, because I want to make it clear that I don't think that people should be denied their Second Amendment rights just because they're transgender.
I do. I do.
Well, then you and I disagree, because once we go down that road, we're saying that, you know, anybody that we believe is mentally ill, regardless of whether or not they've been adjudicated as mentally defective, and that would include you, Carl. A lot of folks on the left would say you don't deserve your Second Amendment rights because they think you're crazy. I think that is a dangerous road to go down.
You're right, it's a dangerous road, but when you have this capacity, AWR, I got 30 seconds for you here, you have to look at it as a mental illness, and that is something that is really need to be looked at.
Right, and I would notice that governor's carrying water for the trans community. He didn't criticize, he didn't point out that this individual is trans, as so many people have avoided. But transgenderism, to me, is a form of mental illness. So we already banned people with mental illness from owning guns. So I don't see a problem with trying to keep them out of the hands of trans people who say they may go
we ban
berserk.
people who are adjudicated as mentally ill, Dr. Hawkins. We don't ban everybody on antidepressants from owning a gun.
Yeah, I mean, it's a debate that needs to be had. I will say that. Cam, AWR, we got to leave it right there.
Thanks.
All right, before we go, 10 months until Thanksgiving, and turkeys are taking names. A delivery man under one list. Details on that next.
The press won't report the real story.
The American people are actually very smart.
Ridiculous statements.
These guys are just plain weird.
Actual scandals.
Even the immunity decision. I mean, that decision was so misreported.
That's my job, and I aim to do it every night.
You can join the Tunnel to Towers mission to do good by donating your car to today's veterans. Your car donation will help Gold Star families, as well as injured veterans, our first responders, and our homeless veterans. Donating your car is quick and simple. Any car is accepted, and we will pick up the car for free. Simply call 844-BRAVES.
By donating your car, you can make a real difference. You can do good.
As a neurologist, my patients are often concerned with age-related memory decline. I recommend Cunol Brain Health with 2 powerful, high-absorption ingredients clinically shown to improve memory, focus, attention, and more. Cunol, the brand I trust.
The crisis inside Ukraine has reached a catastrophic level, with the elderly Jews pushed to the very limit.
Go inside. She's freezing cold. There's no electricity, no heat, no water. Winter is now a weapon of war, used against the elderly, the mothers, and the young children.
They've been lined up here for hours. These are precious people who are hungry, and they have nothing. If someone doesn't do something soon, a humanitarian disaster is coming. So many Jewish people who are just waiting for someone to care enough to pick up the phone.
Fears are growing that without an emergency, full-scale response, thousands will die this winter.
The International Fellowship of Christians and Jews needs your $25 gift now to help rush a winter survival food box of emergency food for elderly Jews and families in Ukraine. Time is critical. Please give now.
They've felt the shaking of missiles. These are people who have already endured so much suffering and disaster.
The fellowship has been here and across the former Soviet Union for decades, but the need has never been more urgent.
Taking out power, taking out water, simple water to drink. We're talking about the difference between life or death. Christian, Jew, standing shoulder to shoulder, saying, we're here to heal, we're here to help.
Your gift of only $25 helps rush a winter survival food box filled with life-saving emergency food for elderly Jews and families in Ukraine who are struggling daily to stay warm and fed. Please call or go online while there is still time.
I was tired of being exhausted at 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
Toxic EMF radiation is coming from your smart devices.
We don't see EMFs. It's out of sight, out of mind.
People around the world are choosing Bodywell. Just peel, stick, and protect. Bodywell's BioCard protects your entire body.
This little device changed everything.
My kids are my world, and I want to do everything I can to protect them.
Go to Bodywell.com, order your BioCard today, and get a BioChip, a $99 value for free.
Don't kibble your dog.
Hey, Dr. Marty.
Hey, back.
What's wrong with this?
Let's check it out. It's still kibble, which means they're ultra-processed. At Dr. Marty, we freeze-dry premium meats, fruits, and vegetables, and they're gonna love it.
Welcome to Connecticut, where some wild turkeys are caught on camera chasing a UPS driver as he made deliveries, forcing him to run for cover in his truck. That guy was moving and successfully delivered his package without a scratch. But this isn't unusual. This morning, this is from my doorbell camera. Look at him. This is this morning in my driveway. So they're all over the place, Rob. You said you have them at your place. I'll come with a bow and I'll take care of them.
Look at those fancy cars at Carl's house.
That's my nanny's car. That's my
Your nanny drives a Benz.
Nicer car than my wife, and my wife drives a Kia. I drive a pickup truck. Only in Greenwich, man.
Those are nice looking turkeys, though.
Yeah.
They look healthy.
Yeah, well, that's what's left after the ones I didn't kill.
Freeze them till Thanksgiving. Yeah.
I get them, though.
I know you do.
Up.
Actually, well, that's a pretty one there, bottom left. It's got nice colors on them. All right, Carl, good to see you.
Later.
Thanks so much.